It's just not a tape from right now. It's a tape.
You got me.
They built that tape. This is like
Love it. Now it's easy.
I've watched it for the last 3 days.
Super America on Murdoch.
They have to take in their
The other teams they're the team that's watching and studying now. So they're all coming out and they got their uppers
Yeah,
too.
but if like you are turning in, the audit part, well, the audit part. That stop sign, that's part of not the big blue house behind the audit part. Say,
Really, nobody likes coffee.
Nathan. But he's got, it's gonna be Nathan. And of course, I didn't like keeping it on, so I had to plans and rebudget everything. So that's gonna say. I'm like, it's forever.
See the last one.
What's a couple weeks for when it's forever?
Where do you find something like that?
It's New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, because I thought it was New Year's Day. I know. New Year's Eve, but I'm not here.
Somebody wants to take her out for to make sure you get December 31st.
Do it right hand.
Somebody's gonna get taxed right off, I can tell.
Right now, pass it around.
I'm going to get my marriage certificate. We're married New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve.
You hear that, Essie?
Y'all come to church more often, you did that already.
Whoa.
No.
That was nasty.
You want to cancel your vacation.
At what time?
I don't know, Nathan.
Uh-oh. Congratulations.
What time's my wedding, Pastor?
We'll discuss that
Everybody's like, what do you mean that's a Wednesday? I'm like, nobody works on that freaking day anyway. What do you care?
Everybody's
What
off
do you
the
do
next day.
but watch football? Really? We can put a little TV downstairs and stream some football. Big deal.
Oh,
I have to work that day.
You ain't gonna put it in the sanctuary?
It's all about me.
Listen, the second and the third floor is gonna be all about me. Now you can do what you need to do in the basement, but.
Okay. Yes, it'll be in the evening. Let's pray and take up the offering before we get too deep in here. Father, we thank you for the offering that we're about to receive. Lord, we pray that you bless those who give and those who can't give. We pray that you would help us to be good stewards of all the resources that we have. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. We have Christmas gift wrapping extravaganza this Friday. I gave it a fun, exciting name because it's actually just work, but I wanted you to think it was something fun to come to. So we have lots and lots of toys. We have 107 kids that we adopted for Christmas. So we have all of those kids' presents, most of them anyway, wrapped and labeled already. But then we have additional toys also that when the parents come to pick up their gifts and their food baskets, they can shop through some of the extra gifts too. And we want to wrap for them and help them do that. So if you're not doing anything Friday evening, 6 o'clock, come help us wrap presents and carry things to people's cars. Yeah.
Here or there?
Here, it will be here. Yeah, that's this Friday.
At what time?
6 o'clock.
Anything ghetto, she's always here.
Emily said something about wrapping.
Anything ghetto, she's
I
always
don't know. That's an interesting question.
It's a wrap
I'm not sure. Probably for the rest of the month that we
I
have.
don't do wrap parties. I
don't
don't
know
wrap my own kids and stuff.
Yes.
No, I wear my MC Hammer pants.
Oh my God, I've got a really great wrap. I sing it to the kids at school when we have wraps. And I kill, shoot them all.
She does not need your help. Okay. Wednesday clubhouse is pancakes and bacon and pajamas.
What is that?
So,
And we're doing a gingerbread
and we're having a gingerbread house.
Read that again, Pastor.
Wednesday night at Clubhouse is our Christmas party. So the kids are having pancakes and bacon for dinner.
Have you done the DJ party?
They're all wearing PJs. And the kids are having a gingerbread house.
Yeah, so if anybody wants, but like me and Emily are taking care of doing the houses. So they may not be out of gingerbread, they may not be like Jolly Ranchers or whatever, but we've got it back.
Okay.
But we need decorate, you know what I mean, like the decorations, so candy.
Icing, gumdrops.
Yeah,
jelly
all
beans,
that.
stuff
So
like
that's
that.
my candy from the parade that I didn't get to you.
Yeah, okay, perfect, bring it
So-
Wednesday night.
I've got a bunch of the
You guys
red
can
and green
come down and
gumdrops
judge when we're
too.
done and do it.
Gotcha. And if anybody, needs, like, April, I know, like, we usually get your kids and stuff on Wednesday, but if you guys wanna come too, you're always welcome too, so. Ange will be running the van, so if we have adults that wanna come too, that don't usually come, since it's Christmas fun, you are more than welcome. You're welcome in your birthday, but, anything else?
Strap their kid in.
That I'm forgetting? We're having, intercessory prayer group, praying at 9 this evening. We're praying for the neighborhood around the new church on South Side. We're just kind of a general prayer that God would help us to open doors over there and help us to reach that neighborhood. And then also on Christmas Day, we're having dinner here at 6 for the community. That's our December community dinner. So, more information about that will be coming soon. So that's literally all the information I have right now. Okay.
Sounds good enough.
Sounds good enough, right? So, but plan on that. Community dinner at 6 o'clock. All right.
We vote that he makes turkey.
Yeah. He's probably gonna,
I gotta have it.
probably not.
Oh, but that turkey was so good.
Yeah. Melted in your mouth. All right, so we're on.
So you can do both, right?
We can do both, yeah. We can do both. Brad's like, wait, what? Okay, I didn't figure. All right. Oh, sorry.
Question, the little white car over in the parking lot.
We tagged it, it has about a couple more days, like, we're gonna try and communicate with the people and let them know that I will. Well, they're gonna have their car towed then.
Well, you can tow it to my house.
Hey, bro. I love this shirt. It's literally my favorite place in the world. Okay. Let's pray and get into the word. Father, we thank you for an opportunity to come and look into your word. Lord, I pray that as you would just give me the words to speak as we are looking at this message that you have for us. Father, I pray that you would do work in the hearts of your people. I pray that we have open minds and open hearts to hear what you have to say to us today. And pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we're talking about questions today. Kids ask a lot of questions. And anybody's kids in that phase right now where they ask a lot of questions, I figured it'll be a few of you again. So they want to know, like, how everything works and why we do things the way we do. And as soon as they ask you one question and you answer it, then they have like 3 follow-up questions for that. My nephews, my sister's kids, they are the champions of questions. Here they are. Are they like the cutest thing ever? They're so cute, but they ask so many questions. So I scrolled through my sister's Facebook page and I highlighted some of my favorite Connor and Spencer questions because they take question asking to the next level. So the youngest, Spencer over here, he asked her, why is Daddy older than you and taller than you, but you're wider than him? So
That's my favorite.
he's now looking for a new home. If you want to look around, he's up for grabs if anybody wants him. The oldest here, he's a bit of a theologian. He likes to ask the real deep, meaningful questions. So he has asked her, is heaven to the right or the left or up or down? And if we all die at the same time, will someone put us in a rocket and shoot us to heaven together? Sometimes she gets really frustrated with their question asking because it just never stops. And so one time she told him, I'm trying to eat and I don't want to answer 100 questions, to which Spencer replied, why? Then he said, 99 is before 100, can I ask 99 questions? She said no, and then he said, is 90 okay? And she said, if you ask me one more question, I'm going to lose my marbles, to which he replied, are marbles tiny? What are marbles for? And they're not being smart about it, they just really want to know. She went on a cruise last year, and Gracie and Zach and I stayed with them for a week, and she's not exaggerating. They asked a lot of questions. So it's frustrating, as kids can be with all their questions. That's how they learn, right? They ask you questions because they need the info, and that's how they learn things. And something happens as we get older that I think is kind of sad. We hit this point somewhere along the way as we grow into adulthood where we decide we already know everything we need to know, or at least we want to appear that we know everything that we need to know, and we stop asking questions, even about things that we're curious about and that we should be asking questions about. Christmas brings up a lot of questions. It brings up a lot of questions for kids. I put this on Emily's page this week. It says, check on kids ministers this month. They're asking what a virgin is, and we are not okay. It is, it is an issue. When you're telling the Christmas story, you always have that one kid that says, wait a minute, what's a virgin? But if we're honest about it, as adults, we probably have some basic questions about Christmas too. We understand the narrative. We understand that God sent his son, Jesus, and he became a human. He came as a little boy. We get that he was born in a manger because his family was traveling and there wasn't room for them in any of the houses in Bethlehem. We understand that there were shepherds who heard this good news from angels. We know that at some point wise men came and brought gifts. So we know the Christmas story. But in all that, there are a few questions I think that even as adults we might have sometimes. So today's message is going to address the when, the how, and the why of Christmas. The passage that we're going to look at is not your typical Christmas passage. It's not in Matthew, it's not in Luke. It's actually in the letter to the Galatians written by the Apostle Paul. It's Galatians 4, verses 4 and 5, and it says, but when the set time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. So the first question we ask is when, the when of Christmas. Jesus was born at a set time for a specific reason. And we might ask ourselves why. We know that he came into the world 2,000 years ago, but why 2,000 years ago? Why not 4,000 years ago? Why not 400 years ago? Why not today? Imagine if Jesus was born today. Technology would make it a totally different Christmas story, right? The angels could have just texted the shepherds instead of scaring them in the field. They could just text them and tell them what's going on. The wise men could have used Google Maps instead of following the star. Right. Just Google Map it. Mary and Joseph probably could have found a room on Expedia.com and had to be in a manger. It would have been a totally different story, right? But the thing is, if Jesus came into the world today, with the way our culture is today and the way the world works today, it would make headlines for a few weeks, and then we would forget about it as soon as the next celebrity breakup happened, or the next, when our attention span is about a week or two. People are too busy and they're too easily distracted. So it wouldn't be the right time. There was a specific time in history that God chose, that God decided this is the exact time that Jesus needs to come into the world. It was the precise moment for, as John tells us, for the Word to become flesh. And here's a few reasons why. At the time when Jesus was born, there was something, I'm going to teach you a big word. Are you ready? The Hellenization. Oh, I know. I'll write it down for you later. So Hellenization is the Greek culture spreading across the world. So remember, at the time Jesus was born, right before that in history, Alexander the Great had kind of conquered all this land, and he had spread the Greek language, the Greek culture, so much so that people would say that the same language was spoken from India all the way to Europe. And it was this Greek language, the language that our New Testament was originally written in. People who study languages say that the Greek language is the easiest language to convey human thought. So, Jesus just happened to be born at a time when kind of all of the world where people were living was connected through this one culture and this one language for words to spread. He was also born under Roman rule. The Roman government was in charge. And in the beginning, that was a problem for Christianity, right? The Romans persecuted the Christians pretty heavily. But there were a few things that the Roman government did that really helped the message of Jesus spread. The first thing is the road system. There was a massive road system in the Roman Empire that made it really easy to travel from town to town that didn't exist before that, and actually parts of it still exist today because it was so good. So people were able to travel. Think about the Apostle Paul as he was traveling on his missionary journey, spreading the gospel. That wouldn't have been able to happen if he hadn't been born right at that time. And eventually, because the Romans had so much control in such a vast empire, eventually when Christianity was deemed the religion of the Roman Empire, it spread like wildfire through the world. So God picked this precise time for Jesus to come, this precise time in history where the gospel spread in a way that it wouldn't have at any other time, because God knew what he was doing. God has timing under control. And there might be some wins in your life right now that you're hanging on to. Like, when am I going to meet the right person? When is my life going to get less stressful? When is this relationship with a loved one going to get repaired? When will my financial situation start looking better? But rest assured, God has it under control. He's got the timing under control. Angie and Phil announced their engagement this morning at the other church. And the more I thought about it over the last few days, the more I've thought about just how powerful God's timing is in that, because they are perfect for each other. Sorry, Phil. He's not here, so I can say it. But they are perfect for each other. They're going to give each other a run for their money, but they are perfect for each other. But if they had found each other 20 years ago, they'd have been a train wreck. They would have been a train wreck.
You would have fist fought really
They
well.
would have fist fought probably every day. And in their life, they both have moved through some really difficult times and some really tough stuff that they have powered through, that God has helped them through. They both moved to this place in their life now where God is at the center of their life, and he's leading both of them, and he's led them to each other, and his timing is perfect in that. That he has gone ahead of them, and just kind of paved the way for them. For a time like now. He knew that they were the right one, but he held them off for each other. I think of all the idiots she could have married between now and then, and she didn't marry a single one of them, because God was saving her for the one that was right for her. Yes, exactly.
Jay, you were next in line, so you better watch it. I told you that this morning, too.
But I'm sure along the way, for both of them, I'm sure there were times where they thought that they were going to be alone forever, or they thought that they were just never going to meet the right one, or they thought that God had forgotten about them, or that he just wasn't going to answer that prayer. But his timing was perfect for them, because God has it under control. He is never late, he's never early, he's always right on time, and you can trust him to give you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it.
Amen.
So the next question that we might have is the how. God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law. We know the Christmas story. We know Jesus was God becoming human. That's called the incarnation. Jesus becoming flesh is called the incarnation. But sometimes it's hard for us to understand that concept completely. It doesn't really make sense. I told the story here once of the guy who believed in God. He believed there was a God that created the world and created everything, but he couldn't wrap his head around the idea that this God would become a measly human being. He just couldn't deal with that part. So he believed God. He couldn't believe the Jesus bit. He couldn't buy into it. Until one day when he had an interaction with a bird at his house that just kept flying into his window. And he kept trying to shoot this bird away because it was hurting itself, but it just kept flying into the window. And so he went outside and he was trying to show the bird what to do, but the bird was terrified of him because the bird thought he was trying to hurt it, and he was really trying to help it. And in his frustration, he thought, man, if I could just make myself a little bird for a second and tell this bird what I'm trying to do so it knows what I'm trying to do. And in that moment, he understood the incarnation. And he understood why God had to become one of us, why he had to step down and become like us so that we can understand him. God becoming a man was the only way that he could save us. It's the only way. C.S. Lewis describes it like this. He says, the incarnation is like a strong man who is called upon to lift a great burden. First, he must stoop down very low, almost disappearing under the load before he rises up again, straightening his back and balancing the whole weight upon his shoulders in order to carry it. And that's what God did when Jesus came into the world. That's the how of Christmas. How this little baby saved the world. How is the little baby going to save the world? Because he's going to grow up to go to the cross and to defeat sin for all time. He's going to grow up and crush the devil under his heel and buy our redemption. So that's the how of Christmas. It doesn't make sense really, but it's cool. I'm really grateful for it. I'm glad that that God humbled himself to step out of glory and do that for us. And then the last question that we might have is the why. Paul tells us that Jesus comes to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. The why of Christmas is probably the toughest question for those outside of the faith. It's hard for them to understand why. Why would God become a human? Why would God come as a baby? The answer is probably the simplest, because he loves us, because he is love. Our relationship with God was severed because of sin. God is perfect and holy. We are sinful and unholy. And he could have just left us that way, right? He could have just left us in our sin. God doesn't need us. He's not lonely. He doesn't need a relationship with us. Acts 17:24-25 tells us, the God who made the world and everything in it does not live in shrines made by hands, neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything. Since he himself gives everyone life and breath and all things. God doesn't need anything from you, but he still wants you. He still loves you. And because of his great love for you, he wants this relationship with you so much that he was willing to die to make that happen. He was willing to step down out of glory, out of the riches of heaven, to come to us as one of us, and that's the why. The why of Christmas is the most beautiful part of the story. It's where love and grace appear. Paul says we are adopted into sonship. Don't let that little phrase just slip by you without understanding how amazing that really is. You were a slave to sin, but because of his love, you get to move from being a slave to being a child. You get adopted as a son of God. You get invited to be a part of the family of God. He looked at you and he said, there's room at the table for you. And you get to be a part of that family. You are awarded sonship with God, and that is the best gift that you have ever received. I'm going to pray in just a minute, and if you haven't received that gift, I urge you today to do that, to enjoy being adopted into the family of God, enjoy that sonship or daughtership, I guess. I don't think that's really a word, but it applies to you too, women. Even you, Maisie. So you can have that peace today. You can know that I read a thing on Facebook today that said there's no orphans in God's family, and I love that. We all are a part of his family. He has adopted us all into his family. You get to be co-heirs with Christ, which is pretty fantastic. It's a pretty good place to be. So I'm going to pray. I'm going to give you a chance to come to the altar. You can come while we're praying. You can come while we're singing. If you want to wait and talk to me afterwards, we can do that too. You can pray by yourself. We can pray with you. The girls are going to come up and sing, and then we'll be dismissed. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you sent Jesus just at the right time. Lord, it shows us that you have a plan, and that your plan is always right. Your plan is always the best way. And Father, we pray that you would help us to remember that as we move through our life. Just like you had a plan for when Jesus would come, and how Jesus would come, and how he would save us, you have a plan for each and every person in this room. You know where they're headed, you know where you want them to be, Lord, and I pray that we would wait for you, that we would remember that you're never late, that it's always your time. that we would be patient while we wait. Father, we thank you for the incarnation. We thank you that you loved us enough, that you wanted a relationship with us so badly that you were willing to humble yourself, to step down away from glory and away from heaven, and become one of us, Lord, to die for us. It's the greatest gift that any of us have ever received, Lord, and I pray that we would never take it for granted, that you would always remind us of it. Father, I pray now that as we move through the rest of this week, that you would help us to remember who we are in you. Help us to remember that we've been adopted into your family. We are children of God, Lord, and I pray that we would be a light in a dark world, that we would help draw other people to you so that they could be also children of God. Father, we pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Which, stand with us and we'll sing. Let's do the